Okay, that should be recording. My
Okay.
mic is working. Hi, my name is Paul Stradowski. I'm president of the consulting firm HR Partners. I do human resource consulting, primarily online training, performance management and measurement, and compensation. I'm not a recruiter, so this is not done for a recruiting function. We're going to talk with one of my LinkedIn connections, and the idea is to this person is one of 2,200 HR connections that I have in the New York metropolitan area and the Philadelphia metropolitan area, and all throughout New Jersey. So I'd like to welcome Joe Scotto. Joe, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Thank you for the opportunity. So I am a senior level HR director, VP level professional with over 30 years of HR experience in both large, 800 million plus organizations, and then also down to, single, person, one person HR departments as well. Looking for another opportunity. The last position I had moved to Chicago, and I find myself on the job market and looking for that next step.
Well, this should be fun, Joe.
So I started my.
Go ahead.
So I started my HR experience working retail actually, and so I was doing training and development, hiring, working on a mid-level department store. And it was an opportunity for me to gain experience that I felt would be really transferable beyond industry. As I didn't want to necessarily work doing merchandising and working retail day to day for the rest of my career. And so I saw HR as an opportunity to learn some really great skills and be able to then transfer them to other industries. As I felt that the HR background was transferable and comparable across different industries. After that company, I wound up working for Monster Worldwide. So that was the parent company of Monster.com, and started working there. I was there for about 4 years, and started right after they went public with about 1,500 employees, and grew almost entirely through acquisition. 4 years later, when I left, the company was at about 11,000 employees. So spent a lot of time working in their advertising department, in one of their divisions that was exclusively a direct marketing advertising world. So agency of record, type of engagements, dealing with, very high-end, blue chip companies, as their, head of HR in a position that had not been existing prior to my joining the organization. 4 years later, that position was eliminated due to a company split and a downsizing, where they downsized about 25% of the North American HR staff, which included my position and a number of others. I did some consulting as an interim and worked on various projects ranging from, some HRIS and 401k auditing to training and development programs, and worked on some staffing and recruitment programs for a large retailer that was looking to expand in the United States at that time. Ultimately, I wound up accepting a role at a company called Merrill Corporation, which is a St. Paul, Minnesota-based company, primarily at the time known as a financial printer. And I worked in their legal services group, where I started as the New York City HR person, and also responsible for evaluating and creating a recruiting function within the organization. The businesses that I supported were centered and focused around AmLaw 100 to 200 law firms nationally. And it was an outsourced business where we had contracted headcounts and very high turnover. And so, part of my responsibility over the next 12 years that I worked there was to create a cohesive network of HR professionals. Ultimately, I wound up additionally taking on other cities and other responsibilities until I became a national director for all their businesses, and built a HR and recruiting organization from the ground up. So, took a field HR generalist responsibility in multiple cities, tied them into a cohesive and structured and consistent approach and practice in employee relations and training and development. And at the same time, built a recruiting function for the company, which did not exist, which ultimately resulted in a staff of about 8 full-time recruiters, where we were hiring over 1,000 FTEs on an annualized basis. I continued working in that company for, as I mentioned, 12 years. That division was ultimately sold to a company called DTI, which is an Atlanta-based similar business focused in legal, doing electronic discovery and outsourcing and court reporting. And so I was the only HR person who went along with that acquisition, reporting to the VP of Human Resources at that company. They created a position based on my experience and my tenure that had not existed. The role was very similar in scope to what I did while I was at Merrill. The only difference was I had to rebuild everything from scratch and do it in about 3 months.
Wow.
And turnover was, it was a lot of change. Plus I was also the only HR person for about 2,500 FTEs that came over with the acquisition. I was the point of contact for change management and transition questions and all of the pluses and minuses that come along with being acquired. And so I worked very closely with all of the departments on both sides of the fence to make sure that acquisition went smoothly, the transition went smoothly, and the integration was successful, which it ultimately was. Again, very similar. It's working with customers, clients, and sales to make sure that employee relations are being maintained consistently and fairly across the business. Again, primarily it was an outsourced business, so there was a fair amount of turnover with that. And so worked. They had not also had a recruiting function when I got there, and built a full-time recruiting staff for them, and completely engineered all their processes, everything from pre-employment and background checking to redoing their ATS system and their workflows to automate and to really allow their managers to be focusing on customers rather than going through resumes and filling these 1,000 to 1,100 positions on a regular basis.
So you've
I was there.
I'm sorry, you had quite a history of building HR organizations then. You consider that your biggest accomplishment?
I do, actually. I've had a very strong background, as you mentioned, in building these teams, and through partnering and understanding kind of what the directions on business is. I've been very successful in transitioning that type of work to a position that it's an organization that's scalable, an organization that's results driven, and one that really becomes true business partners. One of the things that I was very successful at doing at both Merrill and DTI is on new business proposals. I would be the person who would go along with the sales team to pitch to new clients about our value proposition, and was integral in winning a number of large accounts for the company, resulting, and these were multiple year, 3 to 5 year contracted, multi-million-dollar, contracts that I was, part of the initial team in creating that, win for the organization as well. In 2016, as
Go ahead.
So in 2016, in 2016, as the company continued to acquire, they acquired another company, and then my position was made redundant. By the acquired company became the head of HR, and he decided to keep his teams in place as opposed to the existing PI teams. So my position was redundant at that point. And I, moved on to, my next role, which was the head of HR, which ultimately became the VP of HR at HCMC Legal, which is a legal staffing and recruitment company. And again, the role there was very interesting in that it was a single contributor HR person. And so it was something where, I needed to be very comfortable with, doing the strategy and the high-end pieces, but at the same point, tracking stuff on spreadsheets and, monitoring, day-to-day questions and problems, for employees that went along. What was really interesting and really successful about that opportunity for me was I was the third HR person in about 35 years with the company. No HR person that had ever been there longer than 6 months. And, it was really an opportunity to completely build a modern HR organization from the ground up. And so about a month into the operation, we had a change in leadership and brought in a new CEO, who I worked very closely with on creating a culture of what we described as mutuality. And so this mutuality was about, creating an environment that was successful and advantageous for both our employees, our temporaries who work for us, and also for our shareholders. It was a completely ESOP-owned organization, and also with private equity. And so I had an opportunity to really work in all areas. Again, very much continuing my experience as a very true generalist, to look at everything from, what our benefits were, our costs on things. We, picked and implemented an HRIS and payroll system. They had never had an HRIS system before. They had never done performance reviews before. They had never done salary increases in 35 years. We built, or I built, and it was amazing some of the stuff that was missing. But gave me a really good opportunity to work in a lot of different areas. So, built a performance management system for them, again, which they had never done performance appraisals before. They had never done merit increases before. We started to do those. I built for them and introduced a company-wide bonus program. That was an EBITDA-based bonus program, which they had never had before. So all employees at all levels were eligible to participate.
Hey, Joe, I had
a compensation system.
I had a client in a legal services business also, and they had many locations. Was that the case there also?
Yeah, they had about 11 domestic centers that they owned and staffed themselves, but they frequently, depending on client, would put people at client location, or they would do pop-up space, again, depending on the offer and the positions that they were looking to fill at that time.
How did you deal with human resources in those multiple locations?
So I was the point of contact for all of it. So, I would either be out in the field in offices, and I have no problem with, being on the field on a fairly regular basis. I think being visible and accessible to employees and not just a person on the other end of a phone is an important part of being a strong HR asset for folks. And so I'd be out in the field quite often, but then available again, to be on the phone and talk through problems, as they came along.
How did you manage compensation for all those locations? Undoubtedly, all in different kinds of labor markets.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we did early on during my first year was I worked with a third-party consultant, and we built compensation matrices and benchmarked every position in the company. They had never had a compensation or a compa system where they were able to, decide minimum, mid, max for positions and ranges based on geography. And so we worked with a third-party consultant where we, created job tiers and job gradings for all the different positions in the organization, then benchmarked everyone to those numbers, and then used that data to drive either future hiring or make salary adjustments and or performance discussions when we had people who were, potentially, overcompensated for the markets and the roles that they were in at that time. But it was a great opportunity to again, manage an external vendor as well as create a really good structure that they, can now use going forward to, plan their compensation and plan their, organizational needs for the, next, 3 to 5 years.
Let me ask you, what was the biggest, most difficult problem you had to face in your human resource career?
So I would say probably the one of the biggest, challenges I think was that DTI acquisition. Merrill was a very rich and very generous company from an employee standpoint. DTI was less generous. I think that they had just a different philosophy around comp, around benefits, around rewards. And so, the acquisition was not seen very positively at first. And so, it was my job to, keep everybody positive and, reduce attrition as much as possible. As you know, when you have a large acquisition like that, attrition can be pretty large and also pretty crippling to the acquiring company. And so it was, trying to keep your pulse, and I think it was about 2,000 employees. And so again, trying to keep your pulse on, the tone and the feeling in the organization for those 2,000 employees, again, split out over multiple locations and client locations at the same time. So, while also then building this HR organization that's going to then support them long term, proved to be quite a challenge. It was, it was a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of conversations that were ultimately valid and very worthwhile. But it was a lot of using selling skills to influence folks and to really make sure that they they weren't going to just jump ship because one thing went wrong on day 6 when the long game was going to work out for them.
Yeah, merging different kinds of cultures is I think one of the most challenging things that HR execs deal with. What do you consider your biggest professional mistake or screw up? One of my favorite HR questions.
Sure. I would say early in my career, it was making the mistake that, just because somebody corporately has an idea or, because, someone dreams up something that you're just going to move forward with it and just bulldoze your way through because, it's right and it's the right path, right? And so I would say I definitely was guilty of that early in my career. And what I learned from that was the value and the importance of consensus building and partnering with the right people to make sure that, ultimately, if you are bringing something forward, you're going to socialize it properly so that people understand the value that you have champions within the organization, both on a lateral level and also on a senior level, to help in supporting change. Because again, sometimes change is, even though it may be ultimately good for the organization, is sometimes challenging. And just the idea, just because someone has a will to change doesn't automatically make it successful. So that, understanding that, learning that value of building consensus is something that I learned early on in my career and, has been, I would say, a strength of mine in helping to make organizational change, going forward.
Great. That's a good lesson. Tell me something about you personally. What are your hobbies and interests? What do you do for fun?
Sure. So, big TV fan, like lots of people. Also a huge tennis fan. For those of you who are, depending on when you're seeing this, it's the end of August. The U.S. Open is about to start here in New York. And I'll be going to the U.S. Open this week. I've been going every year since I'm 16. So my best friend and I go every year, the same seats, same days, same sessions, and a big tennis fan. So looking forward to doing that this week.
What's your prediction?
We're also involved very heavily. On the guy side, I think it's usually pretty clean cut, right? Djokovic looks really good this year as he continues to roll over people. And I'm always, I have a soft spot for Serena. She has a very tough first round match tonight. But I'm hoping, as I often hope, that she's going to be up there standing tall at the end of the 2 weeks. So, that's exciting. The other thing we do also is we're very heavily involved in bulldog rescue. And so we work with 2 local rescue operations here in the New York City area to rescue English bulldogs and rehome them into their forever homes.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a dog person too. I used to raise Cavalier King Charles Spaniels and train them as therapy dogs for use in hospitals. I actually founded the therapy dog program at Hackensack Children's Pediatric Hospital, the Don Imus Hospital Center in Hackettstown. And the dogs do amazing things.
They do. They do. It's really rewarding when you're able to make that type of a difference with them.
Oh, great, Joe. It was good talking with you. I hope this gives the HR folks out there in my network a chance to see a little bit about you and see your personality. I will include a copy of his resume in the information that I send out to you. And if you have any questions, you can call me at 908-763-5699. This is not a professionally done video, so it's just a plain old one-on-one. So good luck to you, Joe. Hope things work out well for you. I'm going to turn off the video.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Thanks. Good talking with you.
Have a great day. You too.